Thanks a lot. So Frederick and Peter will join me today for a presentation and a lot of demos. So what we are going to do, I'm going to give a quick overview and history to introduce the topic, the Unified Catalog. That is the main topic of today. And then we will start with a more generic demo done by Peter, and then we'll go slightly more technical with a end-to-end demo done by Frederick. So that's the agenda, and after that you're more than welcome, as Wout already said, for a drink next door and enjoy the view. So let's start with the first part of my presentation. So I have a couple of slides to kind of explain where we are heading to. So the API management journey for Axway started about 20 years ago already. In 1999, we launched our first API gateway. Don't start Googling for it, because it was called an XML security gateway in those days, of course, because APIs were not hugely known, and web services were in those days. And that is when we started. And what the name already suggested, XML security gateway, it was completely focused around securing in a secured way, sharing data with business partners. That was basically what it was all about. So web services were quite common in those days. It was more and more common to share them with people outside of your own firewall. It was in the pre-cloud days, of course, so life was quite simple. You had your own castle, completely protected, and you wanted to share some specific data, and that is where we started to focus on. So you had backend applications delivering APIs. I call them APIs, but frankly, 9 out of 10 times it was web services in those days. And then a gateway in front of that to protect from attacks from the outside and to protect against sharing sensitive data to the outside. So the two-way kind of security. That is where it all started a long time ago. And we were quite successful in that area, let's say for the first 10 years of this century. And then in roughly around 2010, more and more APIs, and then you started really talking. So the cloud was starting up a little bit. There were the first iPhones were launched, of course. So more and more you started really to talk about APIs, and what you saw is that more and more, especially larger organizations, had larger numbers of APIs. So there was a need for, let's say, management capabilities, and those were when, for example, Epic started. They were completely focused around that topic, around portals and around, let's say, the consumer experience. And also a company like Axway started in those days by adding on top of the security gateway, which is still the foundation, started to deliver management capabilities and portals to be able to manage a fast-growing number of APIs, first of all, and secondly, to be able to do things like lifecycle management and to start, that is of course where we're going for today, to start managing consumption. So more and more often organizations started to realize that having an API is nice, but it costs money to create it. So you need to make sure that at least a couple of other departments, other applications, business partners, maybe the outside world starts to use those APIs that you created. So that was kind of the journey that we went to. And then if you look to the more recent history, so let's say the last couple of years, what we saw happening is kind of two key developments, key new things. First of all, a very logical next step when you look at an API is API as a product. So you started to see product owners, you started to see in especially larger organizations, you started to see that the API, quite a lot of APIs were really important for creating new business or servicing existing customers in a better way. What we expect is that product marketing, that of course comes next if you talk about API as a product, that you really start to see that. And open banking, PSD2 driven, of course, So banks are kind of forced to do that and starting to see the value. So that is a nice example of where that is heading towards. And the need for that is what we believe in, a marketplace that is kind of the next evolution of API portals. So it's not just a list of APIs, but there is possibilities to add price tags, to start thinking about monetization. Those are kind of the areas where on the left-hand side that we're talking about. On the right-hand side is a completely different story, of course. That is that more and more organizations start to have not just one API management platform, or maybe I should say integration platform, but several of them. So first of all, often they have a classic gateway solution, oftentimes for many, many years. They start to develop microservice-based in platforms like Azure or Google or AWS, which comes often with API gateway type of solutions that are included in those development platforms. Quite a lot of organizations started to use Kafka or Solus or event bus type of solutions with topics that are relevant to list in your possible integration platforms as well. Some organizations started outside of the cloud to create their own service meshes. Governments are, of course, famous for doing starting those kind of initiatives. Often Istio Envoy based, almost always, I would say, Istio Envoy based. So there is a lot of different platforms that deliver integration services, APIs, whatever name you wanted to call it, but they all come with their own, let's say, portal. So that means that you have 4, 5, 6 in large organizations, 4, 5, 6 portals where you can find specific APIs. And that is, of course, a challenge that we believe is not the best way forward. So this is what you typically see happening. And this is just 2 of them. I could have put 4 or 5 solutions next to each other. And then, especially for internal consumers, you can debate whether or not this is possible, but especially for external consumers, of course, it's not acceptable that you need to understand what is in business line A, I need to go to the portal offered by this supplier, and for business unit B, I need to go to that one. That ain't gonna work. So what you are looking for at the end of the day is a unified catalog. That is what it comes down to. That is able to connect to different, in this example, API gateways, but frankly to different integration platforms. So that is able to connect to Kafka topics, that is able to include service meshes and APIs delivered on those kind of platforms. So that is what the unified catalog is really about, is displaying, creating a full catalog of integration assets available in especially a larger organization where internal and external developers can see all the integration assets that are available, and of course can subscribe. If they are to their liking, then you need to subscribe to such an API, and then the unified catalog needs to push that back into the underlying integration infrastructure and ask to get approval for such a subscription, and then ask to handle the actual traffic. So that is the kind of the view that we created, and this is the product that we created out of that. And I'm going to briefly explain it because I'm absolutely sure that Peter is more able than I am to discuss the details with you. So the idea is you have data planes, and that can be a lot of different solutions. On the left-hand side, you see several Axway solutions. On the right-hand side, you see all kinds of other solutions like event buses, competitive gateway solutions, microservices platforms, and hopefully we will add more and more solutions. On the top, you see a management plane containing that catalog to start with, which is of course the core of the solution, and that is what Frederick and Peter will show. And then of course you need some administration features, and what we have currently created is basic analytics. So it's not about detailed traffic and payloads and those kind of things are not in our management plane, but definitely high-level monitoring. And that, of course, is the start for monetization type of features, because that is what you need to be able to add price tags and to be able to start billing consumers. And then in the middle is where the magic happens. That is where we have the agents, and that is what Peter will discuss in more detail in the next part of the story. So I'll hand it over to Peter. Go ahead.
So thank you very much, Rogier. So as you stated, I will do two things. I will first go into a little bit more detail, although detail we can't say that it's that much, of how this really works, how is this unified catalog being populated, and so forth and so on. So indeed, on the bottom you see the different technologies and the different vendors that we are aiming at in order to discover newly created services in there. And I'm stressing on the word services because we're not only talking about APIs, REST or SOAP or whatever, we're also talking about event buses and those kinds of technologies, and also different vendors. So we're not only looking at Axway as a provider or a discoverable entity, we're also looking at the gateways that are used by Azure or by AWS or whatever out there. So in order to be able to discover these services that are out there and to populate this unified catalog, as we call it, we are using these things called agents. Yeah? And an agent is basically is the master of ceremony, so to speak, between an underlying gateway or an underlying provider of some kind and the unified catalog. So this agent that is running, it can be running as a binary on a Linux machine, or it can be running as a container in a Docker or in a Kubernetes environment. Doesn't really matter. But what it does functionally, it has what I would call a vendor technology specific part. So towards the Axway gateway, towards Axway streams, towards AWS gateway, and so forth and so on. It uses whatever integration is available there. Most of the time, it is just, let's say, a set of classic REST APIs. Most of those vendors and technologies expose that, but it can be anything else. So that is what is so specific. So a agent is built for a specific product and technology. On the other side, so the task of the agent is to discover newly created services, not only newly created services, but also detect any lifecycle change that may occur. A service that's being published or deprecated or whatever will be discovered under certain circumstances. Obviously, if you have a gateway sitting out there, any gateway, it may have, I don't know, a few hundred different APIs available. You will probably only want a subset to be bubbled up into the unified catalog, so that those are things that can be configured. So during the setup of an agent, you will be able to apply a number of filter rules that will decide whether a newly discovered service is a candidate to be published in the unified catalog or not. Yeah? So the agent discovers stuff in whatever underlying system we have, and then it uses let's say the Axway standard APIs, administrative APIs, in order to push those newly created or mutated services to the unified catalog in a two-way approach. First thing that happens is a new API or a new service is being discovered and is being kept in what we call an environment. It does not necessarily have to be published automatically in the unified catalog. You can have a filter in between this, maybe a human filter saying, okay, this agent has discovered a new service. We know it, we know everything about it, but it's not in the unified catalog yet. We want that human interaction to validate it and say, okay, this one we're going to publish or not. The default behavior for the demo today is whenever something new is discovered, taking into account the filters and that I've been talking about, it will be automatically discovered in the environment and pushed towards the unified catalog. Yeah? So that's what's going to happen today. Okay, my goal for today is to give you a feel of the capabilities, a high-level feel of the capabilities and the look and feel of our unified catalog and Amplify Central, as we call it. Yeah. So therefore, I'm going to switch to the browser. Which one is it? The Chrome one. And where is the tab? That one over there. Okay, I'm using Frederick's PC. So okay, and I'm going to log on. What is this?
French.
No, it is a keyboard that I don't recognize. No. Okay, at axway.com. So I am, as Peter Oosterlynck, as an employee, I have an account quite obviously, and I have access to a number of tenants. So you have to know that Amplify Central and Unified Catalog is a SaaS-based solution. So it's all a SaaS-based thing. So what you, as a customer, what you do, you're going for a subscription. Hope for the best. So you're going for a subscription, and basically such a subscription is equivalent to a tenant. Eh? So we have a tenant. Okay. Don't ask again. Yeah. But we're a security company, and so security and mobile. Where do we have it? See, we don't fake things over here. We have vier. And I have to have it over there, 354, and then 189. Lo and behold, it works. So I was saying, by subscribing to this solution, you are really getting a tenant. It's a multi-tenant approach. Okay, no, I'm there. Okay, it's not. It's something that was still probably still hanging around from Frederick, I guess. It's probably something to do with your keyboard, I think. Right? Okay. So what you need to know, first of all, you should know up front, I am here, Peter Oosterlynck, in a certain organization. So I'm an administrator and a member of different types of tenants. So I have a multi-tenant environment. A normal customer would only have, in principle, one organization. But what you should know here, that I am logged on as Peter Oosterlynck in this Griffin Corp, and I have a lot of rights there. Basically, I'm an administrator. So what I do, I can see everything and I can do everything. I'm quite close to God, as I always say, with that respect. What you should know, quite obviously, that there's an RBAC system behind it. So depending on who you are and the way that you have been onboarded, you may have access to certain teams or not, and have certain rights or not. That's all role-based. And speaking of that, how do you get on that? So you can self-subscribe. It's a self-service environment. You can self-subscribe yourself, and you need an approval for that. You can have the simple standard way. That is that some administrator sees your request for an account and just allows you to do that. What you can also do, and that is if you have some kind of a workflow or some kind of approval system within your organization that is owned to you and that is specific to the organization, through the use of webhooks, because we support a number of webhooks, we can, for example, say whenever a new potential consumer requests an account, well, we kick off some kind of workflow, whatever you may have out there, by using a webhook. Now, in the demo that Frederick's going to hit, he's going to use indeed one of those webhooks because we have quite a myriad of them. He's going to use webhook for kind of another type of approach. Okay. So remember, I am here, God, I see everything, and I can do everything. So what I will do now is first I'll start with what the potential consumer is out there, because the aim of it all, a unified catalog, is to present your APIs towards those people out there, and you want them to make their life easy so that they can easily discover your APIs, get an idea, feel of the functionality through the documentation, and finally subscribe to such an API. That's your aim. If you're exposing APIs, well, I guess you do that for them to be used. Yeah? Okay, so let's first have a look at, let's say, the catalog. What the normal potential consumer would see. This is the base screen for that. And you see that you have capabilities here, possibilities to filter, to look, because in this case, this organization here, Griffin Corp, has now 211 different services available. 211 is not such a huge number if you're talking to a typical customer. They have a lot more than that, but still 211 is kind of a big list to browse through. So you can select, you can drill down into it. based on different types of criteria. First of all, we have this implicit thing here. Depending on the service that has been published, the system will discover what kind of a service it is. For example, it can be an API type of service. He can find Swagger 2s or OAS 3s or GraphQLs or whatever. I'm looking today for something, so an open API. I don't even know if it's a 2 or a 3. I still have 183 possibilities. Well, then I can search further. I can also, this is automatic, right? This is implicit. But what you can do, and this is not something that the subscriber does, but something that the owner, the API owner does, the administrator does. He can, whenever a new API is being discovered and created, he can assign one or more categories to that in order to make those APIs a little bit more discoverable. Now, since I'm an administrator, I can manage perfectly those categories on my own. So I have the possibility here, since I'm an administrator, to add, delete categories and so forth and so on. And somebody that's managing a catalog, for example, has the possibility to say, okay, this newly created API, it should have this and this and this category. Yeah? So me as a simple subscriber, then what I'm looking for is, okay, out of these 183, it's a little bit too much still. I can say, well, it's or a demo or it's a healthcare thing. Yeah. And what do I see then? Well, I see that I have only 2 left. I'm getting close. And this is the one I'm looking for. So, okay, FEAR, it's a kind of a healthcare standard FEAR condition. I can open that up. And this is where I can now discover what this API is capable of, or this service is capable of. What do we see? Well, on the right, we see some, let's say, some classical metadata, in what environment it's running, what version it is, what team it belong to, and the team is a way of grouping potential consumers in catalogs, so to speak. So you can have different types of catalogs for different types of audiences. And the notion of a team is another way of saying, or is kind of an encompassing notion around a catalog. Yeah, so that's what you should think of. So catalog contains or has access to a number of APIs. And this is let's say the team that provided this API when it was published and so forth and so on. Here we also see, indeed, since I'm an administrator, I have the possibility to say, okay, this API, I'm an administrator, remember, I can make this API available to different teams. I now did, okay, it's available to the France team, the Brussels teams, external users. I can just delete one over here, yeah, or I can add some over here. So this, what I'm doing now is administrating stuff, yeah, and I can add these categories also over here, and I can add tags. So these are the things that a consumer, a real consumer, if I would play that role, would have at his disposition. All very nice. But what do I see here on the left? Well, first of all, we have documentation. Where does it come from, the documentation? Well, initially, it comes from the backend system. It comes from the Swagger, it comes from the WSDL, or whatever contract definition that you have out there. The default documentation is pulled out of that and becomes the documentation for the API methods and so forth and so on. This, however, can be superseded. You can override that because in a lot of cases, the information, the documentation that comes back from an internal backend system is not suitable for external use because we're going to proxy that. Not suitable for external use for all kinds of reasons, privacy, whatever, company secrets. So you can override, as an administrator, you can override this documentation in several ways. It is, if you want, it has the possibility to have some kind of a real, how do you call it, rich text interface. So you can modify that. You also have an idea of the different methods that are available. So this is just what has been discovered when we discovered that API. So these are all the methods in there, okay, and with the documentation pertaining to that method and so forth and so on. I guess you know what I mean. And you have the possibility here to authorize yourself. Why would you do that? Well, you'll see that you have the possibility to try it. So you can try any of these APIs, provided that you can come up with the necessary credentials. And that is depending on the API. If the backend API, for example, was requesting or was requiring a simple API key, well, that is what you will have to be able to produce over here. If the backend API requires an auth authorization with a client ID and a client secret, well, you will have to be able to come up with an access token over here before you can do the try. We do the security. Yeah? So that's what we do over here. And last but not least, well, not really last but not least, the second to last, you always have an idea of the state that it's in. So I said, whenever a new service is being discovered, we are going to pull it up into the unified catalog, but any state will also be modified. So in this case, we see that it published, it could be deprecated, it could be anything but what you want. And then when you, as a potential consumer, say, okay, I know what it is, I've seen all the documentation, I understand this thing, I've maybe done a try it, then he can do a subscription. He can say, okay, I want to subscribe to this API. Yeah, so he can do that. I'm not going to do it right now because it wouldn't have any effect. That subscription really means that he will be known now as a consumer of this API. Yeah, that the result of subscribing and the subscription being validated, again, that can be by a simple person clicking on an approve button, but it can be a complete workflow if you want through one of those webhooks. In any case, the subscription will result in, if you would go back to the drawing, the architecture drawing, will result in the agent discovering the fact that the subscription has been made on the unified catalog and ordering the underlying system, the underlying gateway to say, okay, there's a subscription. Somebody wants to use this API that you have over there, and we need an API key. Oh, okay, that's going to happen over there. For example, when he does that, the consumer would do his subscription, the approvals would be done, depending how it is. But in the end, he could, for example, receive an email saying, okay, you have subscribed to this API, and by the way, this is your API key, or this is your client ID and client secret, or whatever. Yeah. So that's how it would work. Yeah. And once that is done, you're ready. So that person has access to that API, can do whatever you want with it, and quite obviously, you can from this interface also have a look at what's been going on. So I've done my work as an administrator, but I would like to know how these things are really acting. So I have a number of dashboards over here where I can filter on leaderboard on last week or something like that. Example, I know. Well, you see a number of things over here. They're quite small. So a leader dashboard where you see the fastest API, the slowest API, the least used and the most used, and so forth and so on. And you have the possibility to drill down into those. And I will show that the result of the drill down in a moment. So you have this thing over here. You have also kind of an overview tab where you have these kind of things where you see for the API management, you want to see the overview or the transactions. So you see, you have quite some information over here. I could keep on clicking. The thing is, it is all interesting information, but on quite a high level. The idea is that a potential or a publisher, somebody that is an API owner, wants to keep an eye on the usage. Is my API being adopted? Is it used well enough? Doesn't it give too much trouble, and so forth and so on? These kinds of informations. So not on a technical level, but rather on a more high level plane. Yeah. So if you want to look at some details, I could, for example, say API traffic over here, and I could filter some stuff, and I would say, okay, all methods, all status codes, all successes. Those are always the nicest to show. And let me just drag one open for you. I don't know what it's going to give. So this is indeed what we then see. This is quite a simple one, not maybe the best to show. APIs. Do I have anything else here? No, it's on the only page. And if I don't have a lot of data over here. In any case, what I would see here is indeed for each of the interactions, and here we only see something flat. What I would have liked to show you, I don't know why I didn't find it. For example, if you're talking about a service mesh, yeah, and then you have microservices calling one another, then you would see indeed all the cascade of different calls between different containers. And what you would see is then also all the headers over there, yeah, the headers that are there. And I stress on that, the only thing that we show and that we convey from the gateway towards the unified catalog is these headers. We explicitly do not convey payload to the unified catalog dashboards, yeah, for good reason. Well, simply for security reasons, we do not do that. Yeah, we can. So that's it. So we have a number of possibilities there. So we've seen the catalog, the unified catalog. We've discovered some stuff. We subscribe to that. Now, where does all this information come from? Well, that is what we do on the topology level over here. On the topology tab, we have an overview of all the different what we call environments. And now an environment, you could say, is the representation of an Axway gateway or an AWS gateway or a SOLAS service bus or whatever. That is what you see over here. So we see in this environment, the Griffin core, I have a number of, in this organization, I have a number of environments over here. There is some classic Axway API in there. We have some Apigee, we have some Azure stuff, AWS, and so forth and so on. I could go on through that. Yeah. And so if I look at these things, you see we have this thing called how it is being connected, how it's connected at all. For example, this Axway API Manager v7 says it's only partially connected. Well, that means that, remember these agents, we have a discovery agent, and I haven't talked about the traceability agent yet, because next to the discovery agent, we also have a traceability agent, which is about monitoring stuff, about viewing, about capturing some information. So we see that we have a traceability agent. It has been commissioned somewhere, but it's just not running. And the discovery agent is. That is why it says, okay, partially connected. If I take this one, for example, then I see it's completely connected. Yeah. So now I'm looking at this environment. So I'm not in the unified catalog. I'm now very near to those agents, and I see indeed that this agent over here has. Oh yeah, well, okay, it's kind of strange. It has. I'm going to take another one. It's a bit better to maybe. Yeah, maybe that one. But why not? Okay. For example, we see here that this thing over here has discovered already two services. Yeah, the two services are discovered, and in this case, they are already available in the catalog. So this could be a different number. So you could, for example, have 5 services that have been discovered, but due to the setup, you would only have 2 really published in the unified catalog. So these things you can play with, and you can also manage the subscriptions over here. So the subscriptions is where indeed you can manage and activate and approve, deactivate subscriptions, which is a certain potential consumer that has said, okay, I'm interested in that API, I'm subscribing to that, please validate it, give me an API key, and so forth and so on. That is in a nutshell what I would like to talk, what would have liked to talk to you about. I know it's been quite fast, but it was just the idea to give you a bit of a flavor of what we're talking about. Yeah. Next, my colleague Frederick will give you a demo, which is a bit more techy in essence. Doe dat niet?
So, what I would like to show is, and let's take it one small step back, and because Peter discussed everything, APIs already in that unified catalog, but how will they get there? Yeah, how can we, using that agent and that discovery agent, those agents or CLI SDKs, how are you able to get them inside of the unified catalog? And once they are in that unified catalog, how are we able to, well, attach a webhook? And once an API is published, do things with it. And you could trigger something in Jenkins for doing testing, for example, or sending notifications. So what I'm going to show you is, and I don't really like human intervention. I want to do it in an automated way. In this case, is what is going to happen? Well, me as an API developer, I'm using Stoplight, creating myself a nice API, which I'm going to commit inside of my SCM, in this case, in a GitLab. And at Axway, we have, for automation purposes, we have an API management CLI. So instead of the need that I need to go onto a UI, import my definition file manually, I can do this in a completely automated way. So once I do a commit, I can run a Jenkins job, which will automatically import and publish, in fact, my API in our API manager, for lifecycle management, for managing your APIs. What's listening to that API manager, that's our discovery agent. And then our discovery agent is going to see, oh, in that API manager, there has been an API published. And he's going to say, well, I'm going to push it to that unified catalog for everybody to be used inside of what Peter discussed, organizations, teams, and so on. But attached to that unified catalog, there's a webhook. And what is this webhook going to see? Well, there's a resource which has been updated. It's published. It's there. And so it's going to output information. And in this case, instead of going to go to a Jenkins, which can listen to webhooks, in my case, what I'm going to do is we also have a tool called API Builder for really constructing APIs from scratch. In fact, I have created a small flow which is going to do linting. It's going to check that definition file if it's okay. If everything is okay, then he's going to update inside of the unified catalog some description on the API. Yeah, so that's in fact a completely automated way. Well, in this demo, you will see there's a small interception point where I'm going to grab the webhook information. But normally what you could have is you design, you put in your SCM, and everything is automatically done from A to Z without any human intervention, without the need that you go onto our UIs, but automatically done. Yeah. So let me go and see the time restriction which we have. Let me go on to, so I already, in this case, I already designed our my API in this case. What I have here is in fact a definition file. It's quite a simple one. It's an open API tree containing some methods inside, just the definition, the schema of your API. Now that APIM CLI, it requires some configuration because in our API manager, when I import, you could see that API community JSON, that API has some kind of backend API. Well, in our API management, you could say, well, I'm going to expose it, as Peter explained, using OAuth, an API key, basic auth, you name it. Yeah. Now, I don't want to go onto that UI. So using a configuration file, I can say, well, the name of that API, which I'm virtualizing in our API manager, well, that's its name. I want to expose it on a different path than in the backend. I want to have a certain state. In this case, I taken it live. What's the version? Organization, Peter talked about organizations in our API manager. We also have organizations. I can do some description, a summary. I can add an image and a virtual host on which I want to expose it. Yeah? The third file, which is in my GitLab, is in fact just that image which I've defined there. Now, if I now go and I log on to my Jenkins, I created a very basic Jenkins job. If he wants to let me in, there we go. I created a very basic one. It only takes on one parameter and I need to cheat a bit. In this case, I'm going to my repo and I'm going to steal the name. Now, showing you inside of our API manager, at the moment, I don't have anything. I don't have a backend API. I don't have a virtualized API. I don't have anything at the moment. So going into my job, I just say, well, you are going to execute and deploy this API using that APIM CLI behind the scenes. And of course, that APIM CLI in itself uses our product APIs, our products expose APIs themselves. Now, if I do a refresh here, you can see I have my backend API, and you can see I also have my front-end API. Automatically, I can consult it, and as you can see, I have my image which I uploaded, I have my description, I have everything. Now, showing you my discovery agent, and this discovery agent said, well, I detected something. and I'm going to push it automatically to that unified catalog. Yeah? I'm going to expose it. Now, going and Peter, hopefully you didn't do bad things with my platform.
Always.
I'm going to try and log in now. If
Mind,
it's
mind the keyboard.
Hopefully it's working now. There you go. Oh, go back to platform. I go to the unified catalog. And as you can see, my discovery agent automatically pushed that API, which I had in my API manager. It pushed it to the unified catalog, took that image, took my description, and it put it there. Now, as to this unified catalog, I have some webhooks attached. So they resulted in some information being sent. And let me grab this one. And this is going to show me, well, it's published. So if I now take this information and I have my API builder project, and to just show you maybe the flow which is going to be executed, because behind the scenes is also using the REST APIs by the Amplify platform. It's going to take information from it. It's going to consult based on the input it gets. It's going to do linting. Yeah. And if everything's okay, I'm going to change that description, which I have here, with something else. Now, from my API builder, it's quite easy for me to test it without the need that I go through Postman or whatsoever. I can just copy paste my webhook information inside here. I've ran it. It gives me A200. If I now go back to my catalog and I open it again, it did some linting and it modified the description, and it said, well, linting was okay. Status is a success. Everything's going as it should be. And in this case, it's quite a simple example, but you could go much farther than this, yeah, based on that webhook. Yeah. So that's in fact, how do we get that API, which I'm developing without the need that I do a lot of things in web UIs in an automated way to my unified catalog. And was in fact more or less the demo which I had to give.
Excellent.
And then we go to,
yeah, there's one more slide between your drinks and the end of the story. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up where we are going towards. So what I already said and what you have shown is the environment. That is what Peter showed. The asset catalog, of course, with the individual APIs. That is also what you have seen. What we are currently creating and testing with first customers is a product catalog. So there you add your pricing information, you can combine services, you can add pricing information, and then you can create a real marketplace. So the difference between what you have seen today and the marketplace is this monetization features that you can add. So you can add a price plan. You need to pay 1 cent per API call. You get a gold SLA, and then you can do 1,000 calls per month. And those kind of price plans is what you can add in the beta to the asset catalog, and then it becomes the marketplace, and that's kind of the first step. Well, for those of you who have a telecom background, CDRs, that is at the end of the day what we are creating then, and then call detailed records, and then you can do, well, you can make it as complex as the telecom world used to be before the flat fees and flat plans were introduced. I'm not saying we should do that, but you can. And that is what we are currently creating step by step over the next period of time. And clearly you need the analytics to calculate and to count and to feed at the end of the month your billing engine to be able to really start billing. So that is what we are working on today. Well, that's one of the things that we are working on, and in my view, one of the most important things. We're currently testing that with our first customers as we speak. We started last week with that, and that is what we will be working on over the next period of time. So that is. Oh, there's a nice animation. Gee, man, unbelievable. So what we have today as a summary is the gateway, of course. We haven't talked about that today, but we still have that. Full API management capability still available, and this single management plane on top of a multi-vendor data plane environment at our large customers. And we are currently working as much as we can on Marketplace, which is a unified catalog, monetization, and we're also working on the customizability to make the look and feel. Today you can change the colors. Peter hasn't shown that, but you need to trust us for being able to change colors, change logos, those kind of things. So it's fairly basic today, and we're working on making it more customizable, since this will be more and more important for as a kind of a marketing tool for our customers, of course. So we do realize that we need to work on that, and that's exactly what we are doing. So with that, I want to open up, and that's what I agreed with Wout, for 1 or 2 questions, and the other questions we can take. Peter, Frederick, and myself will be available, of course, during the drinks as well. So if there's 1 or 2 urgent questions, I'm more than happy. Either one of us can reply, of course. Otherwise, we'll jump into the drinks. Any questions?
Everybody's eager to join you.
I guess that's it then. Well, I don't know if
Are there already some screens available for the second part, the marketplace, the monetization, etc.?
Yes, there are. As I said, it's currently being tested with first customers. We didn't want to do that today because we wanted to focus on what is available today. But I'm more than happy to share that with you in a separate session. That's no problem.